Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up this week with a creative request, which is where a smaller band or artist gets in contact with me and asks me to check out their work. Today we have a request from Shepherds of Cassini. It says, "Hey Bryan, my name is Omar, an established musician from New Zealand. I really enjoy your reaction videos as they are genuine and I enjoy your analysis and critique. I'm very interested in having you do a reaction video to one of my band's songs. Shepherds of Cassini's second album, which is where the track we're going to be listening to, it was released in 2015, and it is their latest release. So, let's dive into this. We're looking at the track Mauerfall by Shepherds of Cassini. Very ambient so far. Interesting to have so much drive and momentum, rhythmic changes in the drums, given the very calm, ethereal washover we're getting. Really great build-up so far. Yeah, bass guitar, violin. This is a beautiful trio. Oh, yeah, those modulations in the drums. Was that throwing triplets into the mix of straight eighths? Beautiful atmospheric writing. Absolutely love this. And the orchestral layering is just so good. Different parts bleed in and out of the spotlight. Nice way to end that phrase with two variations, the slide, which we haven't heard, followed by that hi-hat run. really great way to punctuate that last idea. Or I should say that last section, since we've entered into a brand new part entirely. The violin over on the left, just chilling on the benches, waiting to come in. Just a beautiful duet. Gorgeous counterpoint going on there. I like how there's also this rotation, like the violin was on both sides, and it's been pushed center so the guitar can cycle out to the sides and have this ethereal surrounding concepts. The drums beginning to lean into some of the rhythmic accentuated ideas that the guitar is landing on. That was a little noisy. Wasn't expecting that. Those are vocals. Those are vocals, okay. Yeah, dig into this tension. Where is this going? Time signatures all over the place. I don't even know what's going on. I've counted phrases that are 5, 6, and 7 long, and I'm not seeing a pattern. I love the percussion. Absolutely love the percussion choices here. Even the violin's getting real playful. Yeah, we're definitely in a 7 pulse right here. Lots of atmosphere. Single bar phrases. Interesting texture. Even our bass kind of feels springy right here. Really cool to hear the bass leading this section. Yes, I love that. It's almost like double speak from the violin and guitar. Really getting larger than life, getting a real big sound here. I think it's from the tremolo picking on the guitar. There's a crackling along our floor here. Just white noise. The drums bringing us the cohesion. The violins taking over the tremolo. Yeah! Primarily was that the hi-hat and the bell of a larger cymbal. And some sort of hand drum. What in the world? So, I was already enjoying a lot of this. The second half, though, what I'm going to only refer to once as the tool section. When we entered it away, when we shifted away from the orchestral writing into more of uh, the prog rock writing, and we'll dig into both of those styles uh, in a second, in case you don't know what what those two styles of composition are comprised of. But when we got into the prog rock section, though, it definitely kept my attention a little less so than the orchestral stuff. That's just my preference. I'm not a huge fan of repetition, and we went into a lot of repetition. It was really exploring sounds through repeated ideas and textures. And I was really digging that mostly linear writing we had in the first 6 or so minutes. So I was still enjoying what was going on, but I was finding um, my mind drifting more often than I would like. Really, the song trying to take me into a trance is what's is what was happening, and I had to actively fight it and keep the attention on the music. But those final like 2 minutes, I think, were 100% worth that slower buildup. Um, and yeah, just what a way to finish that out. I'm not sure if the exact ending, like the last 20 seconds or so, is exactly what I wanted out of it. But with a song this large that covers so much and reaches such heights, I don't think that there is ever going to be a way that I'm 100% satisfied with an ending. This is one of those things that if I were making something like it, eventually you just have to be like, okay, this is how it ends. And you just have to compromise on it, or else you'll be working on it for hours and then days and then weeks and then months trying to come up with the perfect ending. And it's just not going to happen. Most songs get finished at like 99%. There is no such thing as a perfect song, especially from the creative side. Maybe listeners will be like, "This is the best thing I've heard. No criticisms. I like every second. Perfect song." But when you're creating music, it's compromises everywhere because time is a resource. You can't. Once you reach a certain point, you end up spending hours to fix milliseconds worth of a song, and it's just not. And this isn't even just music. This is art. This is programming. This is any creative process. You're gonna reach a point where you just have to ship it, wrap it up, finalize it. Nothing's ever gonna be exactly at what you have in mind. So I mean, there's no way. I think that there would have been an ending that would have been completely satisfactory. Just because, honestly, I wish the song didn't end. The ending itself is a buzzkill because it means the song's over. All right, let's get off of the subjectiveness and look at some objectiveness. What's going on in this track? Well, it's honestly split up into three ideas. Technically, two ideas, I suppose we can break it down into, which is the orchestral composition and the prog rock composition. Now, the orchestral bit is the first, like I said, 6 or 7 minutes of the song, something around that range. It primarily deals with all three of our pitched instruments, our bass, guitar, and violin, intricately playing linear ideas in and around each other while the drum does its best to wrangle all three of them together. The drummer really gets a chance to open up in the second half of this track. We'll get into that later. But for the first 6 minutes, the drummer's job is to minorly embellish where they can, but primarily be the heartbeat of the song, to sit in the pocket and hold the song down and ensure that the instruments don't veer off too far, to keep everybody situated. There are some really neat ideas. I pointed them out as this section was closing out. How the drums were beginning to introduce ideas that worked well, bounced off of some of the rhythmic ideas in the guitar. But it's really a rare instance for this in this section for the drums to do anything other than sit in a pocket, which is necessary because you need that foundation, you need that support. You can't build a song well, you can't build a pyramid upside down. And the same thing goes for a song. You want to have your widest part as your foundation. You want to have that foundational idea that everything else can be built on, that stable ground, right? So the drums bring the stability. They bring the repetition, the pattern. They bring that reliability that you can always lean on, which in the case of music is going to be a rhythmic pulse. Now, on top of this foundation, though, we get the bass, the guitar, and the violin, just beautiful three-way counterpoint with so much attention to where each of these it's an intricate dance, and you really need to know where each of these instruments are so nobody steps on somebody else's foot, but they're all doing their own things, all utilizing the stage in a way that almost feels like it's a solo act. If you listen to just the bass, there's some fantastic ideas going on in there that work well by itself. Same with the guitar and the violin. What makes it beyond interesting isn't the individual ideas, but how they all come together. Like I said, watching three individual dance routines all narrowly miss each other and come together into this beautiful, multifaceted performance. That's what's going on with the music. There's so many moving lines, and there's these little pockets, or maybe the violin will take, a beat and a half off, and the bass will come in and fill that space in, and then maybe they'll take a beat and a half off, and the guitar will come up a little bit while the violin is coming back in underneath the guitar, and it's just this interweaving, intricate dance of these instruments and their melodies, and it is just gorgeous the way that they all rise together and fall together or fill in each other's rises and falls. It really depends on what part of the song we're at. It is wholly linear, I believe. If there are patterns of repetition, they are on a much larger scale than I was paying attention to. I didn't hear any patterns here. It is just phenomenal. And I mean, I really want to transpose this for a string trio, just to hear how it sounds without the electricness of our bass and our guitar, and maybe more of just a classical setting. A cello, a violin, maybe a viola, maybe two violins. I don't know. And see where that takes us. And I want to hear that version. Um, because some of the texture gets in the way a little bit of the notes. It's not like black metal where the texture is more important than the notes at times, but it's probably just because of how I was raised listening to music, my education being primarily classical. I tend to hear note relationships and stuff a lot easier in strings and horns than electric guitars and basses. And I'd even wager that this is an electric violin. I don't see anything here about it. It doesn't necessarily have to be. It could be mic'd and then it gets changed in post, but there are a couple of elements in here where the violins do some really cool stuff that I don't think is possible easily acoustically. But I guess it doesn't mean it has to be an electric violin. That would just make things a little easier as it's already a digital sound. But yeah, like that. I think that's really all the depth I can go into on this. Well, I have one more thing I want to talk about, but it's completely linear. It's like I can't remember all of it. It's so much good music, but and the thing too is that it's very consonant and beautiful. I know it's only three instruments. Trust me, that is more than enough to still get things complicated. But just making sure that there's always room, and part of this is going to be on the producer too. I don't know who produced this. Oh, they produced it themselves. There's also a Dave Rhodes credited as producer, but he's second behind the band. Um, oh, he mixed it. Okay, and helped record, and it was mastered by someone. Yeah, mastered by someone else. All right, so there are quite a few people at play here. But yeah, the production is beautiful too. This could have very easily been a muddy mess, and there's just perfect placement and EQing of everything, and it's gorgeous. So gorgeously done, both on the technical level and what the end result was musically and the emotions that they were going through, and it just mm. If this is any indication of the rest of this album, or they have another album too, self-titled one from August 2013, so about 2 years prior. But yeah, this is one of 6 songs on the album, and the album's still 45 minutes, maybe 50. It lots of long tracks on this. I'm gonna have to check this one out. The other half of this opening orchestral section I want to talk about is the revolving door of atmosphere versus melody. And this is something that we explored in the latter half of this section. It started out with our violin pushed out to the sides. I had called it, sitting on the benches waiting to come in, and it was doing these quick little strikes, like a wah, 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 just kind of sitting on one note and having this little heartbeat. And it was a split sound pushed out to both sides. And then in the middle, we had our guitar and bass doing this gorgeous duet. And some of it was counterpoint, some of it was harmony, just really, again, like everything else, dancing around and within each other's works. And then there was a part where the guitars kind of cycled in from this mono sound in the center and got split out to the sides, while the violins got sucked inside and reunited as a single voice. And then we had the bass and violin duet, same idea, and it was just really cool to hear this concept, almost like trading partners, going along with the dance metaphor, um, and just a beautiful way to wrap up this section before going into our transition idea, which was these really long releases on these notes with a scream on it, and it indicated a lot of tension. And we got like 4 or 8 of them. I don't remember. It was a few, and it brought us into the prog rock section. And it really confused me a little bit because I had no idea what that sound was. I honestly thought it was some sort of scraping on a guitar or maybe an ebow, but no, I think I came around to it just being a vocals thing, which we do have vocals listed. Our guitarist does vocals. It makes me wonder how often the vocals come up. I wasn't a big fan of that harsh vocal. I'm glad it wasn't used often. I would not be as on board with a song full of a lot of them, but the music might make up for the vocal style just not being my cup of tea. So I still got to check these guys out. um, and then this led us into the prog rock section, though. And this is different. This is different from our orchestral section because where that one layered melodies into what we would call counterpoint or counter melody with multiple melodies being executed at the same time. We're now looking at prog rock, which isn't based so much about linear movement as much as repeated riffs with technical aspects to them outside of melodic layering. That was our technical aspect in our first half. The second half, we get a technical aspect from rhythmic ideas. We get a technical aspect from time signature. There was one section I couldn't even name. We did have a 7 pulse somewhere. There was a 6 pulse, possibly like a 3/4 or 6/8 idea somewhere else. And I think right after it should be our second post prog rock section, it was just very like I counted a 5 beat phrase, I counted 7 beat phrases, counted 6 beat phrases, and it could have just been entirely in 6/8, doing 5 6 7 6 5 6 7 6, or even just 5 6 7. in which case we could just break that up into groupings of 6, because 5 and 7 is 12, which is divisible by 6. Um, but honestly, I don't know. I could never figure it out before we moved on. And this is where this section's technicality comes from. It's all in the rhythmic element. When you listen to how the instruments accent their phrases, what beats or off beats they decide to accent, and you get these really rhythmically syncopated ideas, sometimes multi-layered syncopated ideas, giving us polyrhythmic components to the track. This creates this type of textural complexity, different than our melodic complexity we heard in the first section. That's really the big difference between what I would call orchestral composition and rock composition, or prog rock composition, or even prog metal. One of them favors complexity rhythmically, one of them favors complexity layeredly. That's not a word, I'm making it up though. And through this, though, we get a lot of sections that deal with repetition, but where the repetition of the instruments don't always line back up. Maybe the guitar is working on a 5-bar phrase, but the violin is working on a 7-bar phrase. So when the guitar starts its loop over, it's going to start on beat 6, while the violin is still within its first phrase, its first repetition. When the violin hits its second repetition, it'll be on beat 8, while the guitar will have already been in its second repetition for 3 beats now. And you can see how they can get disjointed and out of sync really quickly until they all line back up, which would be at beat 35, I think, is the first time these two would be shared. So then on beat 36, they both start on beat 1 of a new phrase, a new repetition at the same time. This is polymeter. And I don't know if that's exactly what happened. I don't know if one used 5, one used 7, anything like that. But there is polyrhythmic and polymetric ideas in here that creates a lot of that time fluctuation, where I had difficulty figuring out what the time signature was because it was constantly in flux, sometimes even depending on what instrument I was listening to. And it's really cool to listen to. Even cooler of a puzzle to figure out. I will, if when the next, I was going to say if the next time I check this track out, I will probably grab a pen and paper and try to figure out exactly what's going on there. Um, Fun puzzle to do. What's the time signature of this? I love that. Um, Also, I had mentioned the drums didn't have as big of a role in our opening section. It's based on melodic layering, and while there is melodic drumming, it's had its own role there. Its purpose was to keep everything contained. Everybody else was going off the rails. The drums had to be that heartbeat. Well, when we get to the prog rock section, the bass does get some moving bass lines, but it doesn't really take lead melody anymore. So it can be um, a part of the band that holds things together, and it does. It frequently takes a foundational idea, releasing the drums from its cage of being the foundational concept of the whole band, and allowing the drummer to showcase a bit more of their chops. And we hear some wild rhythmic ideas coming out of the drums. Furthermore, I love how the drums tend to key into what other instruments are doing, utilizing the rhythmic structures and accent structures that maybe the guitar is using, and accents those same ones to drive those rhythms home. But the drummer isn't bound to just one instrument's set of accents. It can jump around, and we end up hearing basically a brand new rhythmic structure out of the drums because it utilizes accents from all the different instruments. And it's just a really great way of borrowing a bunch of ideas to create a compound idea in a separate instrument. Just marvelous work. Love it. And that's something I always talk about. Work smarter, not harder. That rhythmic idea, that rhythmic pattern that gets attributed to the drums does exist elsewhere in the song. You just got to hear it from the different instruments. It's not rewriting anything, it's taking the parts that have already been written and combining them into a different passage. Just, yes, more of that. Such a good way to go about writing music. Um, and this goes through a few different ideas, um, but they're all generally in the same area. There is a foundational instrument, there is more of a lead instrument, occasionally there's a second lead instrument, um, but there's also sometimes a second textural or foundational instrument, kind of creating an atmospheric component. And then you have your drums playing off of everybody's rhythms. A lot of this is not done through, as I mentioned earlier, linear writing. It's a lot of repetition based. So sometimes two instruments might swap roles while the third instrument continues to play its, the riff that it was already playing. So we have these micro changes where the song kind of changes if you look at some instruments, but other instruments haven't changed at all. And it allows this really smooth metamorphosis from the beginning of this section around minute 7.5 or 8 until the end when we hit our outro at like 12 minutes in. 12? Yeah, 12 minutes, give or take. Um, and so, once again, even though there's a lot of repetition here, it's really difficult to talk about any specific idea because it kind of smoothly moves between several ideas that are all very closely related, but also quite unique on their own once you take everything in as a whole. And like I said, this was also the part of the song that tried to force me into a trance more often than not. A lot of it is the repetition of it. It's just a very smooth, listenable sound as well. So, yeah, very cool. Now, I said it has two modes, orchestral and prog, but the prog rock actually has a split at the end when we hit the final 2 minutes. It shifts entirely to a new sound where it follows some of the same ideas that we had already heard, but introduces them in different ways. First of all, our drums. We shift almost entirely to cymbal-based work because that resonant tone comes out of hand drums. I'm not sure what kind of hand drums. Could be bongos. I don't know. Definitely some sort of wooden elongated drum that you're gonna hit with your hands, right? Um, and I love that. It's not the first time we got some of that instrumentation. Forgot to mention this, but somewhere between minute 6 and 12, we did have this percussion show up. During the reaction, I was like, I love hearing this extra auxiliary percussion stuff. These are just instruments we don't hear too often in rock. And it seems prog rock is more open to utilizing them than any other branch of rock outside of maybe like reggae rock or maybe ska. Jazz fusion. Lots of jazz fusion has this. But jazz fusion is like vaguely rock. This is very specifically, rock. I don't think you would confuse this for anything else where jazz fusion is can also be tossed under the jazz umbrella. But yeah, I love the extra representation in percussion. The drum kit is nice, and there's a lot of ways to customize the drum kit to get different timbres and personalities and sounds out of it, but I don't see that as a replacement to just not having any other percussion in rock. And so, like I said, I love hearing stuff outside of the drum kit show up in rock as far as percussion goes. But we come to something very heavy handed, and we have these very big bursts of sound. Um, I don't even remember what it like. I kind of vaguely remember it being snare based, but it must have been run through a compressor as well. And it's just this crackling sound. But that also reminds me there was a guitar tremolo picking at this point as well, and I think a resonant tone off of that was just this static white noise as well. I don't know, that was interesting. And then we had a lead guitar tone put on top of that. There's like this wild violin panning. Like it got really experimental with sounds. Before this, even in the prog rock section, it was primarily a pretty smooth electric guitar, a wide fat bass tone, and a violin. Sounds pretty acoustic to me, actually. They never really get away from that. And in these last 2 minutes, we begin to toy around a lot with sound, texture, placement. And like I said, it's a really fascinating way to finish this out because it feels like the song is unraveling. It's becoming bigger than they can control. which is why the ending kind of feels a bit flat to me, because it just kind of ends on this drumming part. But like I said, I really don't think there's an ending that would have satisfied where this was going. The fact that it ends is already a letdown. I just want this band to play forever. That's their job. They are not allowed to ever stop playing. Uh, but yeah, just a phenomenal performance, phenomenal song. Just loved every bit of this. Those are my thoughts. Shepherds of Cassini, the track Mauerfall. That's where y'all come in. Do you enjoy this? No? You got anything you'd like to add to what I said, or maybe correct me on? Whatever you have to say, toss it down in the comments. Above the comment section is a description box. In there you can find links for all of Shepherds of Cassini, anything I can find as far as social media, streaming platforms, they'll all be in there. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Make sure you head over to their page, like and subscribe if you enjoyed their stuff. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC as usual. We're going to have a album review. And then Sunday's the live stream, and Monday we'll be back for the usually programmed stuff, themes and special selections. Till next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.